The courtroom was thick with anticipation, the kind that weighed heavy in the air, suffocating every whispered conversation. The judge, an elderly man with years of experience, adjusted his glasses and surveyed the room. His gaze finally settled on the small girl standing beside the defendant's table. She was too young to be here, too young to hold the weight of a man's fate in her hands. Her tiny fingers clutched the wooden railing in front of her. She barely reached the microphone, yet there was no hesitation in her stance. Then she spoke, clear, unwavering, unshaken. "My father is not a liar." Silence. A sharp, unnatural silence that stretched through the entire courtroom, holding every person captive. The prosecutor, a tall, sharp-eyed man, shifted in his seat, his carefully planned strategy faltering. The defense attorney stiffened. Even the reporters, trained to capture the most shocking moments, found themselves caught in the sheer gravity of the child's words. The judge leaned forward, his voice softer than usual. "Sweetheart, do you understand what you're saying?" The girl nodded. Then she took a breath and dropped a bombshell that no one in the room had seen coming. "If my father goes to jail, then I should too." The room exploded. Gasps, murmurs, the rustling of papers, the frantic scratching of pens as reporters struggled to keep up with the unfolding drama. Even the prosecutor, so calculated, so prepared, was caught off guard. His hands curled into fists as he tried to regain control. The judge lifted a hand, commanding silence. His expression, though calm, carried a flicker of something rare. Concern. "Explain yourself, young lady," he said, his voice steady but firm. The little girl hesitated for just a moment, then spoke words that sent a chill down every spine in that room. "Because I helped him." The murmurs turned into shocked outbursts. The courtroom, a place designed for order, had descended into chaos. Jack Carter, the man on trial, could do nothing but stare at his daughter. His heartbeat thundered in his chest, his breath catching as his worst fear materialized right in front of him. She wasn't supposed to speak. He had told her to stay quiet, that the lawyers would handle everything, that she would be safe. But now, there she was, standing at the center of a legal battlefield, ready to take the hit meant for him. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! This court will have order." The prosecutor stood, regaining his composure. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this is a child. She doesn't understand the weight of her words." "I do," the girl interrupted, her voice trembling, yet filled with determination. She turned, looking directly at the jury, 12 strangers who held the power to decide her father's fate. "You think my dad is a bad man, but he's not. He was just trying to help someone. And if that's wrong, then I'm guilty too." The room froze. Her words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. And then, bang! The courtroom doors slammed open. A man, out of breath, holding a folder stuffed with documents, rushed inside. "Your Honor," he called out, his voice urgent, "new evidence has just surfaced." A new wave of murmurs rippled through the spectators. Jack Carter's hands curled into fists beneath the table. Was this it? Was this the break that could save them? The judge sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "Approach the bench," he instructed. As the man moved forward, the girl stepped back, her small frame seeming even smaller beside her father. Jack reached out, his fingers shaking, and gently took her hand. "Emily," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "you shouldn't have done that." She looked up at him, her big blue eyes filled with something stronger than fear. "I had to," she whispered back. "I couldn't let them think you were bad." Jack swallowed hard. His world had been spinning out of control for weeks, but now, with his daughter beside him, standing her ground despite the storm crashing around them, he realized something. The truth was coming out. But whether it would save them or destroy them forever was something neither of them could predict. The night air was thick with the crisp bite of autumn, the kind that made the leaves rustle like whispered secrets. Inside the small kitchen, the warm glow of a single bulb flickered as Jack Carter stirred a pot of soup. The quiet hum of the stove and the occasional clink of a spoon against metal were the only sounds in the house. Emily sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs as she finished her homework. Her pencil tapped against the paper, her thoughts wandering. It had always been just the two of them, her and her dad, against the world. She loved these moments, when the house was peaceful, when it felt safe. "Almost done, sweetheart," Jack said, flashing her a tired smile. Emily grinned. "I can smell it. Is it chicken?" Jack chuckled, reaching for a ladle. "You know it, best soup in town." She giggled, shaking her head. "Only because no one else makes soup around here." Jack smirked, about to reply when, bang! The front door burst open. Jack turned instantly, his body tensing. Emily's smile vanished as a shadowed figure staggered into the house, breathless, his clothes ripped, and something dark smeared across his hands. Mike. Jack stepped forward, his voice sharp. What the hell happened? Emily's heart pounded. She knew Mike, her dad's best friend, the man who used to visit all the time, the one who told the funniest stories, but she hadn't seen him in months. Mike's chest rose and fell rapidly. His hands trembled. "Jack, I need your help." Jack's gaze flickered to Emily, then back to Mike, his jaw clenched. "What did you do?" Mike swallowed hard, glancing around as if expecting someone to burst in after him. I think I made a mistake." Jack didn't hesitate. "Emily, go to your room." "But Daddy, now." Emily knew better than to argue when her father's voice got that low. She grabbed her backpack and hurried upstairs, but instead of closing the door completely, she left it open just a crack. She pressed her ear against the gap, her heart hammering in her chest. Downstairs, Mike's voice was hoarse. "They're after me, Jack." Jack's voice was tight. "Who's after you?" Silence. Then a shaky whisper. "The police." Emily's breath caught. Jack exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. "What the hell did you do, Mike?" "It's not what you think," Mike shot back. "Jack, listen to me. I didn't do it, I swear. But they think I did, and if they find me, I'm finished." Jack paced, his fingers running through his hair. "Jesus, Mike, you can't just show up here like this." "I had nowhere else to go," Mike pleaded. "Please, Jack. I need time to figure this out." Emily could barely breathe. The weight of what was happening pressed against her chest. A heavy silence fell between the two men. Then, Jack's footsteps stopped. "I have an idea," he said. That was the night everything changed. At first, Emily didn't know exactly what her dad had done. She only knew that Mike didn't leave. He stayed in their basement, hidden away, like a secret nobody could talk about. And Emily, she became a part of it. She didn't mean to lie. But when the police came knocking a few days later looking for Mike, she did exactly what her dad had asked her to do. She shook her head and said, "No, sir. We haven't seen him." 5 little words. A simple lie. But those 5 words changed everything. The morning after Mike arrived, everything felt different. Emily woke up to the scent of bacon and pancakes, something that rarely happened. Her dad never had time to cook breakfast. He was always rushing off to work, always too tired. But today, he sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug, staring at a piece of paper with a look she had never seen before. Emily hesitated in the doorway. "Daddy?" Jack quickly folded the paper and forced a smile. "Morning, sweetheart. Want some pancakes?" She nodded but kept her eyes on him. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," he said too quickly. She climbed onto the chair across from him, her small fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. "Is it about Uncle Mike?" Jack sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Yeah." Emily hesitated. "Did he do something bad?" Jack's face darkened for a moment. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than usual. Mike was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Emily's little eyebrows scrunched together. What does that mean? Jack's sigh was heavier this time. It means someone else did something bad, but the police think it was Mike. Emily's heart squeezed. That's not fair. I know, sweetheart. She looked down at her plate, suddenly not hungry anymore. Are you going to help him? Jack hesitated. I don't know yet. She didn't like that answer. She wanted it to be simple. If Uncle Mike was innocent, they had to help him, right? But things weren't that easy. Over the next few days, Emily watched her father in a way she never had before. He was different. He checked the windows more often. He whispered into his phone at night, making calls he didn't want her to hear. He looked over his shoulder when they went outside, as if he was afraid someone was watching them. One afternoon she came home from school and found Uncle Mike pacing in the basement. A map was spread out on the table, his fingers tracing a road that led out of town. I have to leave, he muttered. I have to go before they catch me. Jack sat across from him, looking torn. Running will only make you look guilty. Mike slammed his fist on the table. Jack, they already think I'm guilty. Emily stood at the top of the stairs, clutching her backpack. She didn't understand everything, but she knew one thing. Her dad wanted to do the right thing. They climbed out of the truck and moved quickly, keeping to the shadows. The storage facility was deserted at this hour, but that didn't mean they were alone. Jack knew better than to assume no one was watching. Rachel knelt by the lock. It's a high-security one, she muttered. Shaw's not taking any chances. Jack pulled out a small crowbar. Then we don't either. Rachel stepped back as Jack wedged the crowbar into the lock and pulled. The metal groaned in protest before snapping loose with a sharp crack. They froze. Silence. Jack exhaled and yanked the door up just enough for them to slip inside. The inside of the storage unit was colder than the outside, the scent of dust and motor oil thick in the air. Stacks of old crates lined the walls, and a single overhead bulb flickered weakly above them. Rachel wasted no time pulling out her phone, snapping pictures of everything. There has to be something here, she whispered, rifling through a stack of papers on a workbench. Jack moved toward the back, his eyes scanning the crates. Some were labeled with fake shipping names, others with numbers he didn't recognize. But one, sitting apart from the rest, caught his attention. It was marked with a single word, evidence. Jack's pulse quickened. Rachel, he called. She turned, and when she saw what he was looking at, her eyes widened. That's it! Jack yanked the crate open. Inside were stacks of files, flash drives, even videotapes. He picked up one of the files and flipped it open. Mike Porter's name was scrawled across the top, and underneath it, Jack's blood ran cold. A fake witness statement, a fabricated timeline, a falsified police report. This is it, he whispered. This proves Mike was set up. Rachel grinned. Jack, this is enough to take Shaw down. Before Jack could respond, a sharp metallic click echoed through the storage unit. Jack turned slowly, his stomach dropping. A man stood at the entrance, blocking their way out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in all black. A ski mask covered his face, and in his gloved hands was a loaded gun, aimed directly at Jack's chest. Rachel sucked in a breath. Oh no. The man's voice was low and cold. You two just made a big mistake. Jack didn't move. He knew that one wrong step could mean the end of both of them. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something. Another stack of crates, teetering dangerously on the edge of a shelf. An idea formed in his mind. A reckless, dangerous idea. He just needed a distraction. Rachel must have read his mind because, in the next second, she did something insane. She grabbed the nearest crate and threw it at the masked man. The man ducked, cursing. And in that split second, Jack lunged. He grabbed the shelf and yanked. The entire stack of crates came crashing down. The masked man shouted in alarm, diving out of the way as boxes and metal parts rained down. Jack didn't wait. He grabbed the crate with the evidence and turned to Rachel. Run! They sprinted out of the storage unit, Jack clutching the files as they raced toward the truck. Behind them, the masked man struggled to his feet, shouting into a radio. "They have it! Stop them!" Jack's chest burned as he ran. He could hear the screech of tires, headlights flashing in the distance. More of Shaw's men were coming. Rachel threw open the passenger door. "Go! Go! Go!" Jack tossed the crate into the back seat, jumped into the driver's seat, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. Then, just as the first car came speeding toward them, Jack slammed his foot on the gas. The truck shot forward, tires screeching as they tore out of the storage lot. Rachel clutched the dashboard. "They're following us!" Jack glanced in the rearview mirror. 2 black SUVs gaining on them. Fast. "Hang on!" he growled. Then he jerked the wheel hard, swerving onto a side road. The truck bounced as they hit an uneven patch of road, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The SUVs followed, their engines roaring. Rachel's phone buzzed. She looked down, her eyes widening. "Jack," she breathed. "What?" She turned the screen toward him. It was a news update. Breaking. New evidence discovered in Carter case. Sources say it may involve dangerous criminal Lucas Shaw. Jack's breath hitched. They were exposed. Everyone, including Shaw, now knew exactly what they had found. And that meant one thing. Shaw would do anything to stop them. Jack barely heard Rachel's voice over the roar of the truck's engine. His mind was already racing, his grip tightening around the steering wheel as the weight of the situation sank in. They had the evidence, but Shaw knew. And Shaw never left loose ends. Rachel's phone buzzed again. She checked the screen, then turned to Jack, her expression pale. "We have a bigger problem." Jack didn't take his eyes off the road. "Bigger than 2 cars trying to kill us?" Rachel's voice was tight. "It's Emily." Jack's foot nearly slipped off the gas pedal. His heart pounded against his ribs. "What about Emily?" Rachel turned the screen toward him. A single text message glowed against the dark background. "We have your daughter. Bring what you stole, or you'll never see her again." Jack's vision blurred with rage. The road, the headlights, even the pounding of his own heart, it all faded into a haze of red. His fingers curled into fists so tight that his knuckles turned white. "Pull over," Rachel said quickly. "Jack, you can't drive like this." Jack slammed the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop on the side of the deserted road. Before Rachel could say another word, Jack threw the door open and jumped out, pacing in tight circles, his breaths coming in sharp, ragged gasps. "They took her," he growled, his voice shaking. "They took my daughter." Rachel climbed out and approached him cautiously. "Jack, listen to me. We can't panic." Jack's head snapped toward her. "Don't tell me not to panic, Rachel." "That's my little girl." Rachel held up her hands. "I know, and that's exactly why you need to think." Jack's breathing was uneven, his entire body vibrating with barely contained fury. But he forced himself to listen. He had to. Rachel pulled out her phone. "Let's figure out where they're holding her." Jack ran a hand through his hair, trying to force his mind to work. "Shaw wouldn't take her far. He knows I'll come for her." Rachel was already typing furiously. "I'm checking recent activity from Shaw's people. If they took Emily, they had to move fast." Jack clenched his fists, feeling utterly helpless. Every second wasted was a second Emily spent in the hands of a monster. Then Rachel stiffened. "I think I found something." Jack was at her side in an instant. "Where?" Rachel turned the screen toward him. A security camera feed showed a black SUV pulling into a warehouse near the docks. The timestamp was from 20 minutes ago. Jack's jaw clenched. "That's it." Rachel exhaled sharply. "Shaw's men are guarding it. We'll need a plan." Jack was already walking back to the truck. "I don't need a plan," he said coldly. "I need my daughter." Rachel cursed under her breath but followed. "Jack, listen." He turned, his eyes blazing. "No, you listen. I don't care what it takes. I don't care who I have to go through. I'm getting my little girl back. And if Shaw thinks for a second that he can keep her from me, Jack's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. He's already dead. Jack drove like a man possessed. The truck tore through the empty streets, the city lights blurring past as his knuckles turned white around the steering wheel. His mind screamed with one single thought: Emily. Rachel clutched the dashboard, her eyes flicking between the map on her phone and the road ahead. Jack, slow down. If we go in blind, we'll... Jack didn't let her finish. I'm not waiting. Rachel swore under her breath but didn't argue. She knew nothing would stop him now. The docks loomed ahead, an eerie maze of rusted warehouses and abandoned shipping containers. The warehouse in question sat at the far end, its exterior dark and silent, but Jack knew better. Shaw's men were inside, waiting. Jack killed the headlights and rolled the truck to a stop behind a stack of crates. Rachel double-checked her gun. We need to be smart about this. Jack was already stepping out. I'm getting my daughter. Rachel grabbed his arm before he could move. Jack, listen to me. If we go in guns blazing, we'll both end up dead. We need a strategy. Jack exhaled sharply, his pulse hammering. Fine. But if anything happens to Emily... It won't, Rachel said. We do this right, we walk out with her alive. You good? Jack nodded once. Rachel scanned the perimeter. 2 guards at the front. Probably more inside. Shaw won't make this easy. Jack's jaw clenched. I don't care. Rachel took a deep breath. All right, let's move. They stayed low, creeping through the shadows. Jack's heart pounded in his ears. Every second felt like a lifetime. Then, a sound. Footsteps. 2 men stood near the entrance, guns slung over their shoulders. Rachel whispered, I'll take the one on the left. Jack didn't wait. He moved like a ghost, silent and swift. Before the guard could react, Jack grabbed him from behind, wrapping an arm around his throat and dragging him into the shadows. The man struggled, gasping, but Jack's grip was iron. A moment later, the guard went limp. Rachel handled her guy just as fast. Jack caught his breath. Let's go. They slipped through the door. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, filled with crates and the distant hum of machinery. Shadows stretched across the floor, but Jack's focus narrowed to one thing: the sound of a child's muffled sobs. Emily. Jack moved toward the sound, his pulse a war drum in his chest. Then, looking for someone? A voice echoed from the rafters. Jack froze. Lucas Shaw stepped out from the darkness, flanked by 3 armed men, his signature smug smirk curled across his lips. Jack's fists clenched. Where is she? Shaw tilted his head. Safe. For now. Jack's vision turned red. If you've hurt her... Shaw laughed. Come on, Jack. You know how this works. You have something I want. Jack's jaw clenched. The evidence. Shaw nodded. Hand it over. Walk away. Your daughter goes home. Rachel tensed beside him. You know he's lying, right? Jack did. Shaw wasn't letting any of them leave alive. Jack exhaled, then reached into his jacket. Fine. Shaw's smirk widened. Jack pulled out the flash drive, held it up. Then, he threw it across the room. Shaw's men flinched, eyes following the device as it clattered against the far wall. And in that split second of distraction, Jack moved. He lunged, grabbing the closest thug's gun and twisting it free. A shot rang out, echoing through the warehouse. Chaos exploded. Rachel ducked behind a crate, firing at Shaw's men. Jack drove an elbow into another guard's ribs, spinning to grab his weapon. Shaw cursed. Kill them! Jack didn't hear anything except his own breath, his own heartbeat. He fought like a man with nothing to lose. A bullet whizzed past his ear. He fired back, dropping one of Shaw's men. Then, a scream. Emily. Jack turned just in time to see Shaw dragging Emily toward a back exit, his gun pressed against her tiny head. Jack's blood went cold. Let her go, Jack shouted, stepping forward. Shaw tightened his grip. Drop the gun, Carter, or she dies. Jack's hands shook, his mind raced. Rachel, breathing hard, whispered, Jack, don't. But Jack already knew. Emily's blue eyes were wide with terror. He couldn't risk it. Jack dropped the gun. Shaw grinned. Smart man. Then, Rachel fired. The bullet clipped Shaw's shoulder. He stumbled, cursing, just enough for Emily to break free. Jack was already moving. One punch, then another. Jack tackled Shaw to the ground, fists slamming into his face, his knuckles splitting open with each hit. Shaw gasped, blood spilling from his mouth. Jack grabbed him by the collar, teeth clenched. You threatened my daughter. Shaw coughed, smirked. She was never getting out alive. Jack's grip tightened. Sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashed through the warehouse windows. Shaw's face paled. Jack leaned in, his voice ice cold. You are. Then he knocked Shaw out cold. Rachel exhaled. Took you long enough. Jack ignored her. He turned. Emily was already running toward him. Daddy! Jack caught her, lifting her up, holding her tighter than ever before. It's okay, baby, he whispered. It's over. And this time, he meant it. Jack sat on the courthouse steps, the crisp morning air carrying the echoes of voices from inside. The weight of the past few months pressed down on him, heavier than anything he had ever carried. But for the first time in what felt like forever, it wasn't suffocating. It wasn't fear. Emily sat beside him, her tiny fingers wrapped around his hand, refusing to let go. Ever since the night at the warehouse, she had stayed close to him, like she was afraid that if she let go, he might disappear. Jack didn't blame her. From the courthouse doors, Rachel emerged, a slow smile tugging at her lips as she crossed the pavement toward them. Well, she said, sitting next to Jack. That jury didn't take long. Jack exhaled. Not much of a choice. Inside, the verdict had been swift, unanimous, guilty. Lucas Shaw, the man who had terrorized the city, manipulated the system, and nearly destroyed Jack's life, was now facing a lifetime behind bars. Justice. Real, undeniable, unshakable. Jack should have felt relieved, but all he felt was exhaustion. Rachel nudged him. You okay? Jack let out a slow breath. Yeah. Then he glanced down at Emily, watching her carefully draw shapes in the dust with the toe of her shoe. I knew you'd win, she said quietly. Jack swallowed the lump in his throat. I don't know if I won, sweetheart, but we made it. Emily turned, her blue eyes locking onto his. You're not going away, right? Jack shook his head, pulling her close. No, baby, I'm right here. The courtroom, the chaos, the fear. It was over. Rachel crossed her arms. So what now? Jack let out a breath. For months, his only goal had been survival. Now, for the first time, he had to think about the future. Emily tugged on his sleeve. Can we go home now? Jack looked at her, at the little girl who had stood in front of an entire courtroom and fought for him, at the daughter who had never once doubted that her father was a good man. He brushed a strand of blonde hair from her face, smiling softly. Yeah, sweetheart. Emily grinned. Good, 'cause I want pancakes. Rachel snorted. That's what you care about? Emily shrugged. Daddy makes the best pancakes. Jack laughed. A real, genuine laugh. The first in a long, long time. Rachel leaned back against the steps. You know, not many people get a second chance like this. Jack looked out at the city, at the life waiting for him beyond this moment. No more running. No more fear. Just Emily. Just home. Just a new beginning. Jack stood taking Emily's hand. Then I'm not going to waste it. And with that, they walked away. Together. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping narratives. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Jack's place? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another thrilling story. Your support keeps these stories coming. And remember, sometimes the truth isn't just about justice, it's about survival. Stay tuned for more. Blast off.